It's been a fixture in the paper for over 100 years. You've seen it on the front page every morning. It's the Weatherbird, the colorful character who is always there to fill us in on the day's events. But who is the man behind the bird?
Hi, I'm Dan Martin. I'm the Weatherbird cartoonist for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and I've been doing drawings and cartoons and designs since 1980 for the Post. I got to the paper in 1980, and Amity Wolschlager was the Weatherbird cartoonist. He had been doing that for 50 years. And then when he retired, Al Schweitzer took the job. Then about 1985, he came to me and said, "Look, I'm thinking about retiring. Would you be interested in this?" I said, "Gosh, yes." And so I've been drawing it since 1986.
The Weatherbird has a long history, with many talented artists carrying on its spirit over the years. But the bird itself was born on a train returning to St. Louis on a particularly cold winter day.
In 1901, a staff artist for the paper, Harry B. Martin, was coming back from an assignment out west, and he was looking through a magazine, and it had pictures of little baby birds, little baby blackbirds that he thought were pretty funny. So when he got back to St. Louis, this is in February, and it was snowing and the weather was crummy, and he did some sketches that he thought that would sort of reflect the same entertaining comic features of these photos of these little baby blackbirds. So he realized, it's snowing, this could go with the weather forecast every day. So he drew up about 10 or 12 of these. He submitted them to the editor, and so they ran these, and then when they had to start repeating some, all the readers of the Post wrote in and said, "No, we want a brand new Weatherbird every day." So that's when the madness started.
The Weatherbird quickly became a popular staple in the paper, but cartooning in St. Louis extended far beyond one character. As the city grew in the late 19th century, it became a hotbed for artists.
Turn of the century, we're the fourth largest city in the country. There was a lot of artists that were attracted to the Washington University School of Fine Arts that came through here, as well as a lot of artists that went through and were attracted to or worked at the 1904 World's Fair.
Some of the most celebrated cartoonists in history have found themselves in St. Louis. Among them were bold political satirists, blunt war correspondents, pop culture caricaturists, and one newspaper magnate who would become one of the most influential media figures of all time.
Joseph Pulitzer is a famous publisher. He essentially reinvented journalism and created modern journalism. He was an immigrant from Hungary. He was a very educated man, very bright, extremely energetic and ambitious. He was recruited along with other Europeans to come to the United States and fight in the Civil War. When the war was over in 1865, he had no money, no prospects, and he sold his last bit of clothing, a silk handkerchief, to buy a train passage to St. Louis. So when he got to St. Louis, he fell into a crowd of fellow European intellectuals at the St. Louis Mercantile Library. Through those connections, he became involved with the Westlicher Post, a German language newspaper in St. Louis that was very famous. And then he became an owner of the Westlicher Post, and later he was able to buy the St. Louis Dispatch and St. Louis Post and combine them in 1878. He was here until he went to New York and bought the New York World. Pulitzer died in 1911. And then he left about $2 million of his estate to Columbia University in New York City to establish the journalism school and prizes. And so today, that's still the most prestigious award and world famous, the Pulitzer Prizes. And it really started by an ambitious young Hungarian here in St. Louis. Joseph Keppler was actually an Austrian immigrant and got to the Post-Dispatch after the Civil War. He met Joseph Pulitzer at the same German bookstore that both of them liked to go to. And he started a publication called Puck, and it didn't go over very well here. It kind of flopped. But then he went on to New York City and revived it again, and it became a huge sensation. It was sort of the defining American humor magazine that all other humor magazines have derived from. And it was noted because it had these tremendous stable of artists, world famous cartoonists. Al Hirschfeld was arguably the greatest caricaturist of the 20th century. He was born and raised here in St. Louis. He was really a child protege and really gifted. And so when he was about 10 or 11, his mother took him to an art instructor and said, what more can we teach this child? And the instructor said, you really need to go to New York. So that's when they moved to New York, and then he worked doing drawings in the motion picture industry there. But he became famous for drawing theatrical caricatures. So he haunted the theaters of Broadway and did sketches in the dark. These were famous in the New York Times. Anyone that has an Al Hirschfeld drawn of them covets it. Bill Mauldin, he won the Pulitzer Prize here in St. Louis for cartooning in 1959 for a story about Russian gulags and Boris Pasternak, the author. But his even greater fame came when he was a much younger man in 1945. He worked for the Stars and Stripes during World War II, and he created these two characters called Willie and Joe that were the quintessential dog-face average guy soldiers. Anyone that was a GI that's still around from World War II, they revere Willie and Joe and Bill Mauldin.
Throughout all the change and tumult of the 20th century, the Weatherbird has remained a constant. Now, as it continues into its second century, we look back on its legacy and its path into the future.
I've tried to bring the Weatherbird up to a more almost national relevance. I feel a great personal responsibility to carry this on as long as I can, and that the paper carries it on as long as they can, because it's a terrific tradition. It's the oldest continually run daily cartoon in the country, and we're pretty proud of it at the Post.